Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Saturday, the 12th of April. It's 9:11 p.m. And I think I'm going to try to wrap up The Womb Inseminated by Solomon now. And I think that maybe some of the key points that have been addressed in um, the first four podcasts need to be touched upon again, because if I'm going to sum up, you kind of have to, you know, bring it all together. You know, it's like the rug in the dude's apartment in The Big Lebowski ties the whole room together. I want to say, I'm just saying what spontaneously pops into my head, but I want to say that no matter what I talk about on my podcast, your responsibility is to experience yourself as a pure being. And I have given my recommendations and the things that have worked for me. I am not what I might call a permanent liberated being, a permanently liberated being, but I've experienced liberation. And if you can do it in the body, um, it's very easy to get back to it outside of the body. That's another thing that they don't tell you. Okay, you don't have to do the whole guru thing and don on a robe and beads and grow your beard out and all of that sort of stuff. You can if you want. That's a tremendous form of service to humanity, to be the peacemaker, the light, the wisdom giver. But for most of us, we have to experience ourselves as a pure being. And there's many ways to do it, and you do it the way that you feel most comfortable doing it. If you're ensconced in the Christian religion now and you listen to the Talamanca Review, then you just keep going forward, okay? You just keep looking for that illumination within you. It would be good if you could find some form of Christian contemplation or meditation, because I truly believe that the silence is the thing that really does it, okay? That's my belief, and I don't think anything will ever change that. Okay. So the first major concept in this series was agency. And I told you that human beings have agency on the planet. We are the correctly appointed sentient being on this planet. Okay? What does that mean? It means that nothing can get done without us. And this law of agency and this law of sovereignty, it goes into the law of nations as well. Okay? And the law of nations is a way to understand the way this is going down interdimensionally with the interdimensional beings that are running the show. And that's who's running the show. We got that 100% right in The Light of Darkness. Doesn't mean the ETs aren't real. Doesn't mean the negative ETs aren't real. But they're just here like sharks because there's chum in the water. There's blood in the water. And they're just exploiters and ravagers and looters. Not of storefronts, not of Apple stores, but of other stuff, which I've spoken about on this podcast. And which, quite frankly, are too horrible to revisit. So let's just hope you remember. But that would be like the Greys, the Reptilians, and some of the other races that are here, okay? And they're freeloaders, they're looters, they're pirates. And because the interdimensionals have brought this world to a state of such negative vibration, and we are in a tremendously negative vibration right now. Okay? I do agree with Father Redhill from the Sean Ryan podcast, The Exorcist, that this may very well be the worst generation of man, significantly worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. We are so defiled now, it's unbelievable. I rarely speak this way because, well, who would listen? But I've set you up with like four podcasts on the womb, inseminated by Solomon. So I have a little bit of liberty now, a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of latitude. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to use it. Anybody who thinks this is a normal, beautiful, and functioning world now is fucking retarded. And no, I'm not being cynical. No, I'm not a goth. No, I'm not walking around all in black with black makeup on my face. No, I'm not reading Lovecraft and Aleister Crowley and putting myself into this state. It's an accurate observation of the world. It is so defiled now. There is no brotherly love. There is no human family. We have basically become, quite some decades ago, we became economic cannibals. You know, for those of you who are fans of great television like The Sopranos, there was that season they did where the guy who played the Liquid Terminator in Terminator 2, I forget the actor's name, um, he showed up in The Sopranos as a sports store owner, but he had a gambling problem and he gets in debt to the mob. And to pay his debts, they bust out his store. And a bust out is where they max out all the credit, they do everything they can to squeeze every dollar out of the store, and then they let it go into bankruptcy. And the debtor suffers the consequences of bankruptcy court, which would be better than not paying the mob because that would be a different kind of bankruptcy, deathruptcy. And it's called a bust out, okay? And I think one of the reasons that television show was so popular is because it incidentally, I don't think it was intentionally trying to do this. And this happens a lot in art, where you talk to the filmmaker or the script writer or the novelist, and something happened in the art, and you talk to the artist, and that wasn't their intent. That never consciously entered their mind, and yet it becomes a persistent attribute of the art, the storytelling. And in The Sopranos, the shocking thing about looking at the mob from like, however long the series went, from 2001 to 2007 or 8, through the lens of Tony Soprano and his family. And James Gandolfini died in 2013. He did not live long. He was in his early 50s. But it was like we were holding a mirror up to ourselves. And and you could say, well, we're all like the mob now. You know what they did to that guy at the sports store? That's a Monday on Wall Street. They just eat other companies, and it's all done legally and lawfully. Everything now that we sell, all of this self-help bullshit, cannibalistic. Just human beings cannibalizing each other. That's all it is. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to build a house. Nobody wants to do anything that is really constructive. It's just make your money by lying to your brother, your sister, your neighbor, and never let them know you lied. Get their money and run away. You know? I'm not saying this is everybody, but it is the majority of people now. Like, I mean, I think of what my son is going to have to go through in this modern economy, although it may not last that long. I think existence is going to get very, very difficult very, very soon. Okay? Very difficult very, very soon. And yeah, we're all the mob now. We're all Tony Soprano. Except maybe we're not killing each other, but that's going to come pretty soon too. Okay? The situation is going to get to a point where if you're not in a safe place, and by safe I mean you know your neighbors, you've known them for years, you know their true character, it's going to be very difficult to get through this. Very difficult to get through this. I'm not trying to be spooky. I'm not trying to do a dark podcast. I'm trying to give you an honest dispatch. Okay? We are going through a spiritual dissolution. I'm not sure how big it is. Some of them are just astral and physical, and some of them go right up to the spiritual regions. So everything below the spiritual singularity is wiped out. That only happens once every 100 million. I don't know. I don't know the yugas. Like I say, I've gone my whole spiritual life and my whole life as an acolyte and a journeyman to advanced journeyman. I've done the whole thing without really getting into the math of it. And I recognize it though. Like it's been spiritually shown to me a few times. Like that thing with the number 40 and then the 369. Okay, so 369 repeating. As I said, I think in this series of podcasts, those are micro openings in the reality, but you only need like a subatomic size of something to slip something into this reality. Okay, in spiritual matters, size size matters, but the smaller, the more effective. Okay, it's almost like an inversion. And so 3 repeating, 6 repeating, and 9 repeating never close out, and that means energy can get in at that numerical point of the construction of this reality. Energy can get in or get out. 369, okay? And then you've got the 40, which is a moon plus 12, which is 40. 28 plus 12 is 40. A lunar cycle is always 28 days. That's why the lunar calendar has 13 months. Okay, and I think it's actually accurate, very accurate. Like you don't have to do leap years or anything that we do to accommodate the solar calendar. And that 28 plus 12 equals 40. You divide 40 by 12, it's 3 repeating. Okay, and that's why all the time in the desert, in the cave, why that number just keeps coming up in the biblical narrative, 40. It's a 333 repeating. Okay, it's occulted. It's sort of hidden. So it's a moon. Half a moon would be 14. It's a moon plus 12. So it's a moon plus like 40%, 42% or something. Okay. And let me ask that actually. Let me just do that right now. What percentage of 28 is 12? 42.8571429. Isn't that interesting? Because 42 is, yeah, very interesting. Okay. All right, enough of the math. It's not going to serve us at all. So you've got agency, right? And the nation state is a way of looking at agency. So you could say that if a country, and when you look at life through my lens, you'll see something that maybe you've never seen before. Okay, so you could easily convince yourself that this world is lawlessness and chaos. But at the highest levels, no, it isn't at all. They want the same outcome as the lawless people, the raiders, like the one African tribe who attacks the other African tribe, which is always spiritually a very desolate thing to do, to attack your neighbors for resource or women to breed with or slaves or whatever. It's the darkest thing you can do, right? And it's really not done as much as people think. I mean, we can talk about all the things that the United States has done on behalf of, let's just, it's really, Washington, Rome, um, London, and Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is going to replace all three of them. That triumvirate is going to collapse into Jerusalem. Okay? And the world has been run through the triumvirate of London, Rome, and Washington. Okay? And they all have magical structures. They all have the, what the hell do you call those standing obelisks? They all have obelisks. The war, we talk about this in the Galactic Historian. The war obelisk is in Washington. The money obelisk is in London City. And the magical obelisk, or the obelisk that gathers up the energy, the human psychic energy, is in Rome. And they were all brought over brick from Egypt. Okay? This whole thing, the etymology of this whole thing goes right back to my root race, which is why I'm so adept at understanding this, because it's in my bones. It's in my bones. Okay? Like, it's so freaky, it's unbelievable. So it goes to Egypt, and Egypt, modern Egypt, in terms of the magic they knew and everything, or part thereof, is represented today by the Khazarians, by the dark Jews. Okay? The good Jews, the Torah Jews, they're just on their path to God, like a Buddhist, like a Christian, like anybody. And that has to be recognized. And don't listen to idiots who just go on and on about the Jews, okay? The Dark Star cult we're dealing with, they're experts at camouflaging themselves within the livery, station, and position of people who are allowed to go in society without their trust being doubted, without any doubt that they can be trusted. That's why the Catholic priests, so many pedophiles gravitated towards the Catholic clergy, because the impulse to violate children was very strong in them, and they could do it very easily in the livery of a Catholic priest. Okay? It's just what it is. But this Dark Star cult, and it's not really the Khazarian mafia either. They're aware of this cult, and they do some of the dirty work. But the name, everybody's got these names, okay? The Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Kabbalists. No, this is a dark star cult. And a dark star is like a mini black hole. And if you want to see a dark star, I gave you one already in this series of podcasts. Jimmy Savile was a dark star. Okay? So a black hole that sucks everything in. Okay? There's no outflow of energy. You throw him a child, he just sees something he wants to violently rape and murder and watch bleed out. The innocence, the beauty of life in a young child, boom, he's taking it in. There's in the normal human being, a mechanism begins in which there's an outflow of energy. We see a child, I see a child, I feel love immediately. I see a new life. I see endless possibility. I see innocence. I see the light in the eyes. I see the big smile when they call me T.O. Bruce. And you just love children, right? A dark star is the opposite. So this is who we're dealing. You can call them Satanists if you want, but how does that apply to all the people on this planet who aren't Christian, who don't operate in that theology? And it's beyond even Satanism, because Satan is not involved in this. Okay, this is something else. It's being run by these interdimensionals. Okay, and that's why I call it a dark star cult. And these interdimensionals, they're infinitely smarter than us. We cannot compete with them intellectually. Okay, it would be like a child trying to debate Socrates in ancient Greece. It's not going to happen, okay? And the disparity between them and us is even greater than that. There is no suitable metaphor. Their IQs, I don't know, equal to or beyond what AI will be in 2 or 3 more generations. They are literally walking computers. quantum computers, and they're interdimensional. So their intelligence is not limited to the fixed time space of our physical reality here in 3D. They're like beyond genius. You can probably say they know everything. At least when they're around you, they know everything about you. Okay? And they are the architects of what's going on. And there are groups of them that come and go from this planet. And the temple is going to be a place they can come and go from. It's going to be an embassy, okay, for these interdimensionals. And these interdimensionals, whatever's going on here, they trump the demonic legions, they trump Satan, and they trump the negative extraterrestrials. Everything stays away from these things. They're that toxic. They're that radioactive. Okay? It's like it just is what it is, okay? Chicken skin. Uncooked chicken skin. Okay? And that's what the non-human ones look like. Okay? And the human ones are rabbis, Jesuits, and anywhere you see that black suit and black hat. Okay, like the men in black. That's the Dark Star cult. Now, in the physical ranks, not every rabbi may be aware of it, but I would say a significant portion of them are. And I'd say specific Chabad, the leaders of Chabad know. And just listen to them speak. Just listen to them speak. When they talk about the destruction of the world, they're salivating. Okay? So they're a lot of the human agents that work with these interdimensionals, these men in black, these black suited interdimensionals, they don't really know what they're dealing with. Even though they're interacting with them, they don't even know what they're dealing with. Okay? And prolonged exposure to them irradiates human beings. But it's I say irradiate because it's like radiation as we understand it in the sense of a nuclear meltdown like Chernobyl or and yeah, I was just I'll leave that thought. My mind is the the narrator in me is just jumping to like 4 or 5 different points in the story at the same time, and I gotta like keep it all sorted in my head. Um, so a lot of the human agents, they're not really fully certain of what's going on. The ones at the very top are. The ones at the very top now, and they're human beings that they've been doing stuff for a long time now, centuries. Like some of these dudes, think of it like dark yoga. Okay? And this is another thing I figured out. It was given to me by Spirit in meditation a number of years ago, like going, I think 2008, 2009. It was like like a whisper into my consciousness. And it just said, everything you see in the positive has a negative counterbalance, and everything you see in the negative has a positive counterbalance. And it's not really a voice when you get into knowledge transfer when you're meditating. It's just you suddenly realize something. So this was a realization of a furtherance of the law of duality. And I ended up writing a book about this called The Stolen Child. And it's a very good book. You should read it. I'd like to do a book club on that one actually. And there's an audio version of it now on Amazon. But in that book, which I wrote in 2012, I postulate a world in which we are run by a cult. The leaders of the cult are the 3 chief demons, Belial, Mammon, and Moloch. And there's humans involved in the cult. And they do die, but they don't go through the memory wiping. They have on the other side a bardo, a space they create with psychic energy through their rituals that sustains them to death, brings them into their next birth, and like the Dalai Lama, they remember who they are at a very young age. And then the people around them begin to instruct them. And in many instances, they take on the same name and retain their property, okay, in the context of the novel. So how did I think of that? Well, what was the revelation in that meditation? Everything you see happening on the positive is happening on the negative, and everything you see happening on the negative is happening on the positive. So, do we have a public facing example of controlled reincarnation? Yes, we do. It's the Tibetans. And there are other secret societies that have been doing it for centuries, but they're not publicly known. Okay? I'm just postulating. I couldn't name two or three off the top of my head here. But I'm certain, just by the law of probability, that it's not just the Tibetans that are doing that. So, why would we think that there isn't a negative counterpart to that? Negatively reincarnating groups, okay, that maintain consciousness and continuity of mission. Because one of the more difficult things for people to understand as you get into these things is they cannot, and yes, I'm repeating myself, but I've always got new listeners. And let's be honest, the things I say are so relevant that they do deserve to be repeated a half dozen times over the months or the years that I'm podcasting, because they're very, very important points. Okay? And this one I just lost. It's how it goes here, man. It's butterfly wings. I can't even remember what I was going to say. So the negatives are consciously reincarnating. Um, we've had cloning since, I think cloning goes back to the 30s, around the late 30s, okay? So the level of darkness that we got into in the 20th century is mind-boggling. And people say, well, we're in the midst, we're going to experience an alien invasion. Well, might I suggest to you that you contemplate it already happened? It didn't happen the way you think an alien invasion would happen. And this would be the interdimensionals, okay? And I'm not finishing my thoughts. I got to be more disciplined in these podcasts, okay? So, when a nefarious group like an oil company or something wants to exploit the resources of a country, they're not necessarily going to go and hire Blackwater or some other international mercenary force to go in and wage a private war to secure the grounds where the diamonds are or the oil is or what have you. What they're going to do is they're going to send emissaries in there. And those emissaries are going to begin communicating with the top people in government. And they're going to try to bring those people in government into their fold, have those people enrich themselves at the cost of betraying their own people, their own countrymen, and then, from their perspective, lawfully raid the country because they have the permission of the sitting king, where king could be a prime minister, a president, or what have you. And this is the way it's done. And they do it that way because they're not stupid, because there is a cosmic set of laws we live under. And, I say this sometimes, and people get really upset when I say this. Sometimes for the greater good, you got to stand up to these people and even accept martyrdom, like even if you're going to get killed, because that puts it on them. Okay? If you can't beat them, it doesn't matter. You've got something backing you up that recognizes the sacrifice you made and will come in and deal with it. Maybe not immediately, but it will be dealt with, okay? And that's the way we took North America too. The Jesuits came over and either co-opted or killed the shamans. There was there was a massive culling of native shamans when the Europeans came over here because the priests couldn't compete with them. And the only way to control the people was to cut them off from their spiritual source. And the spiritual source was the shamanic culture in the tribes. So they killed them. Okay? Now, it's not all black and white. Some of the tribes were very, very dark, and some of the shaman were very, very dark. I don't want you to get this idea that it's all black and white. But The way we take over a country now is we either co-opt the leader, and if you can't co-opt the leader, you sponsor rebels with money and guns and logistics. You sponsor rebels in that country to take it down, and then those rebels give you what you wanted all along, which was the oil field, the diamond mine, the gold mine, whatever. This is the way it works. But you always see this attempt to merge with indigenous agency in that nation state. You see? Okay. Now take that out to these interdimensional men in black, black suited, black hatted figures. They have a plan for the earth, just the way their human agents in the form of the rabbis and the Jesuits go and fuck over other countries. The interdimensionals are using them to meet that same requirement that the corporations do when they want the resources of a nation. But in this case, it's the resources of the planet, and the human agency that they're using is largely rooted in the Abrahamic religions. And it's in the rabbis, and it's in the Jesuits. Okay? Probably Saudi Arabia as well. I don't know how religious those guys are, but there's probably a chapter of this Dark Star Society in Islam as well. And I would imagine it's living around the big black box, the Kaaba. Okay? And one of the reasons they get away with this is the general spiritual illiteracy of people. People just don't understand anything anymore. You know, I'm not sure if this is a byproduct of what happened, you know, when what I might call the Tartarian Empire was taken out. I don't know. I don't know. But the key point is here that it's a global takeover with the agency of, and it's looking more and more like the rabbis at this point, but don't kid yourself. The Vatican is 100% behind this, okay? And is just letting the Jews take point on this one because it is their tradition, their land, their temple, okay? Now that temple will have an agency of its own. You know how I said only human beings have agency? The temple will have an agency, and it will have a very powerful agency. And part of it will be this idea of, wow, that's weird. Okay, anyways. Um, so this agency will come through, and what this, you see, everything out there is basically balanced. Okay, there's things that in our present state of development that could wipe us out in a millisecond. So why doesn't that happen? Why is all of this stuff going on? You know, why is there this dance, this politic? Why don't these interdimensionals just wipe us out? Which they could do easily. Because there are things that could wipe out the interdimensionals just as easily. And so their actions have to show an awareness of cosmic law, even though they cheat. You know, and these rabbis are the biggest spiritual cheaters out there, right? You can think whatever you want in Judaism, just as long as you don't act. The sin is the act in Judaism, but your internal life, you can be fucking kids, you can be doing this, you can be doing that. You know, that's why God gave us an imagination. Okay? And that's your first clue that the religion doesn't go beyond the fourth dimension, doesn't go beyond the astral. Okay? When you get into serious spiritual work, the concept of sin begins in thought, not in action. Okay? Much higher level. And you start to live multidimensionally when you live that way. So it's not just the temple, although the temple is its own problem, because the temple is sitting at what is basically the center point of the world. Okay? And this is an occult truism, okay? This is probably the most important point in the world, Jerusalem. It's basically the center of the world, okay? So that would be the perfect place from which to rule the world. Number two, it's sitting on top of so much diabolical energy that's dormant. It's incalculable. Now, once that energy is awakened with fresh blood, because think of it like going into a hibernation like a bear, or like a caterpillar going into a cocoon. That's what the Temple on the Mount is now. Okay? But when the blood starts flowing again, and the psychic energy or the loosh, remember the game, it's to gather energy, right? Remember what I told you the Vatican is doing. It's gathering the psychic energy. London is gathering the money, and Washington is the enforcer with the war obelisk, okay? In the new system, everything will be done pretty much from Israel, and whatever Israel has to subcontract, they will subcontract. And Israel will be very powerful for a short period of time. Very like unimaginably powerful. A lot of people are going to die. But that's not the end of the world, right? You've done it 1,000 times already. If you've done it 10,000 times already, if you're listening to the Talamanca review, don't worry about it. If you can't get yourself to really feel that in your heart, the lack of worry, just take my word for it, okay? It's not a big deal. You'll be scared when it happens. Everybody is, because the fear is coming right from the consciousness of the body. And the body has its own say in things, right? So the body will express the fear. Now, you should be able to see fairly clearly now, especially if you've read my work as well, like The Light of Darkness and things like this, my work and Bob's work. You should be able to see quite clearly now that this plan has been in motion for quite a while, like mid-late 1600s, and that it is a Jewish and Protestant Masonic plan. And then as it neared its fruition, or after World War II, a lot of forces capitulated and joined them, including the Vatican. Okay? I think the Jesuits were always with them. Okay? Now, the people who know what's going on, I don't think they're doing what they're doing with any lust or enjoyment. Some are, like Jimmy Savile, okay? But Savile was lost. He's literally a demon in flesh, okay? And a rogue demon at that. And or you could make the case with a person like Jimmy Savile is that he's evidence that human beings can become darker than demons, and they can't. Okay, we have the potential to become everything: God in flesh, like a Christ; demon in flesh, an angel in flesh, a saint, anything. Okay. So this dark star cult is going to take over the world, and they've done it in a sense lawfully. And this is what is so spooky about it. And this is why they're so calculating. And this is why people don't understand what's going on. You can't just sit down over a beer and try to explain this to people. Like if I tried to explain what I've meticulously detailed to you folks in this now fifth installment of The Womb Inseminated by Solomon, if I tried to do this over a couple beers with some friends I grew up with in Ottawa, they would probably try to have me committed. This is so hard to believe. And the questions people have are legitimate. Like, well, if somebody wants to take over the world, Bruce, like, why don't they just do it? You know, if these powerful interdimensionals are here, why don't they just do it? Well, they have to be able to make a case that we consented to it in some measure, or alternatively, because the universe has a punitive aspect to it as well, that we deserve it. Okay? So at the end of the day, everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. And we can go for long periods of time where that is very difficult to see and very difficult to comprehend. Where you try to talk to people about spiritual matters and they look at you like you're crazy. There's no God. I'm just going to enjoy my life, and there's no higher states of consciousness. There's no realized self that swims freely in the ocean of consciousness. Bruce, you're crazy. Just get on with your life, and you know, or you're afraid of dying, or something like this. So there are periods. I would say that the generation of the baby boomers was probably the most spiritually opaque generation, and I don't know how long. And it was just like the perfect generation to let go of the spiritual discipline. It was the beginning of the technological boom, fast cars, because all this stuff is new. Like, so imagine being a baby boomer. Imagine being somebody born in 1947, 53, 63, 73. They would be 78 now, which is not that old with today's healthcare, right? But everything came in. I mean, we went from farming to driving, and I mean en masse, meaning every house had this, okay? Driving, televisions, um, just basically everything we have today in its original version. And the other one I talk about in Stardust is dislocated voice, which begins with the telegraph and the wire and the ability to project voice like telepathy thousands of kilometers away. I can project my voice to the other side of the world with these podcasts, and I do. I literally hear from people from the other side of the world. Okay, so the baby boomers, they got intoxicated with it all. And I don't really blame them. It was intoxicating. Okay? I mean, it was like that line in The Usual Suspects. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he doesn't exist. Okay? And part of a fear is part of a healthy spiritual life. And if you don't understand that, you will you if you keep practicing, you will come to understand it. Okay? Because there are things to fear out there. Not really. You don't have to fear anything, but at the same time, it's an oxymoron. There is and there isn't. It depends what state of consciousness you're hitting it at. But there are things to fear out there. Okay? And one thing to fear is the collapse of civilization and the decimation of your community, your friends, your family, the destruction of everything you love, everything that your grandparents and your great grandparents contributed to building. That can't be pleasant, right? And yet these things happen all the time, and we're getting very close to it happening again, especially in the first world. And nobody saw this coming. And our leaders now are perfect examples of dark star associates. So a dark star priest would be somebody fully read in. And a dark star priest may not even be complicit with the plan. But what happens with these dudes, these interdimensionals, you reach a point of no return in your dealings with them. There's no getting out. Okay? It's a Faustian bargain. There's no going out. It's like the deal with the devil, but they're not the devil. They're something else. And a lot of these people, believe it or not, and I'm not trying to make you have sympathy for them here, but a lot of these people are captured and trapped. And maybe some you could save, but um, what's that word in Christianity? Deliverance, right? I don't think any pastor could deliver these people. They're just too far gone. And the consequences would be intense, right? You can't really help other people spiritually. It's an illusion. The Christians believe you can, but they haven't figured it out yet. And they don't perceive reality deeply enough. right? You can create the illusion that something has changed for a short period of time, but all you've done is rearrange the person's causal energy like a second mortgage for the house and give them a little cash in their pocket and they think they're okay again. But they're not. They've just compounded their debt for a future date or a future life. It's just like a financial manager coming in and reworking the karma. Okay, but it doesn't dissipate the karma. That's another trick going on out there. And a lot of these I don't want to get in. I don't want to criticize anybody on path in this podcast as I sum up the womb inseminated by Solomon. So if they get into power, it's going to be very, very difficult to find transcendence. And whatever religion and spirituality remains will be chemical and dark. Okay, now I've already explained to you what the material, chemical, and transcendent is, right? And look, I'm not being boastful or aggrandizing myself when I say some of these more complicated podcasts or series of podcasts, you might do well listening to them 2 or 3 times because they seem off the cuff, they seem impromptu, and they are, but you're dealing with things I've been meditating on for like over a decade now. Okay? And it's just now is the time to let it all out and talk about it. Lawfully, I can talk about it now. Had I tried to even 5 years ago, when Bob and I finished The Light of Darkness, we agreed that there would be no marketing. I broke the rules and did one set of interviews on BitChute with this dude named Brian Rue. And a lot of people have watched those videos now. And you look at what they did in the 20th, and everything is split now, right? Because they don't want you to see the whole thing. They want to keep you in this hemispheric way of seeing things, left brain, right brain, rather than seeing it wholly. Okay? So this is the unity between the UFO narrative and the religious narrative, the demons and hell and all of this, and the interdimensionals and the extraterrestrials. It's the same thing. It's about the takeover of the world, the destruction of our world, and the destruction and enslavement of us as a human species. And it will be done through the third temple. Because if they get the third temple and Noahide law globally, lawfully, that means the mitigating forces that would come in and check them, like forces equal to or greater than them, these interdimensionals and their associates, will not, by cosmic law, have permission to come in and interfere because the earth itself, the planet itself, will appear to be in consent to it. Even though that consent was gained by dumbing down people with the vaccine, by every kind of duplicitous means possible, it doesn't matter. Okay? It doesn't matter that the elections for governor in Louisiana in the 50s when Huey Long was running things were completely corrupt. It doesn't matter that everybody knew the elections were completely corrupt. That environment allowed the political process to get to that state. And once Huey Long was put into the governor's office, he was governor. There's, you know, so we're talking about points of no return here. Okay? And the Temple of Solomon is a point of no return, meaning that we cannot go back to the old world. Whatever is left of it after the temple group is done, whatever it is they're going to do, it won't be around. We're going to have to start from almost from scratch again. Okay? Maybe not as severely as the flood or something like that, but so this is what it's all been about, folks. So the womb inseminated by Solomon is the temple. Solomon may not have even existed. Sol is sun and Mon is moon. So it's a kind of um, very, very astral religion. Okay? Very fourth dimensional religion. and it will serve as a baseline, and it will run for an indeterminate period of time, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. So I would say don't even waste your energy. This is happening. Nothing's going to stop it now. Putin is behind it. Trump is behind it. Ursula von der, whatever her name is, the chairman of the European Commission, she's just giving all these speeches now, just basically licking the Jews' balls. Europe has a long history of benefiting from the Talmud. Just listen to the shit she's saying on YouTube now. Okay? Everybody's bowing down to the Jew now. But not because of love, because of fear. Because that whole culture is run on fear. Everybody in that culture is terrified. Terrified. No matter what your rank. Even the Rothschilds, they're terrified. And I'll tell you why. It's because this is important to understand too. It's because it is, let me just find something here. Yeah. It's because, all right. Thank you very much. No, thank you. No, delete that. Thank you. This, by the way, is why these cultures are so hierarchical. Whereas when you get into true spiritual culture, there's really not a whole lot of hierarchy. Okay? Everybody is recognized to be equal. Everybody lives together, and that's all there is to it. And these societies are all hierarchical. Okay? So this is throughout all the secret societies, and I'll tell you why. It's because in the world of psychic expansion, absent the connection with love, everything becomes very hierarchical. And this is not really consciousness expansion these people are doing. It's mind expansion. Okay? And they have their own techniques. They're fairly tried and true. They're brutal. They're traumatic, but they produce results. Okay? And so they keep doing them generation after generation and producing these people and these foot soldiers to get this work done. Okay? And what they do, in a sense that's so vulgar, is that they take the predatory nature of the world below us. And that means that everything is preyed upon. You know, snakes eat frogs, frogs eat insects, everything's preyed upon, right? Predation. Now, when you get to the human form, you're supposed to transcend predation. We're supposed to be a vegetarian species. Don't listen to the fucking meatheads out there. The Jordan Petersons, the Joe Rogans, these people on the keto diet. No offense, Larry. I know I have a friend who's on the keto diet and he swears by it. He's lost like 50, 60 pounds. He looks great for his age. But there's a spiritual consequence to eating so much meat at a vibrational level. Okay? And what you're doing is you're extending the nature of predation into the human experience. And as stewards of this planet, we're not supposed to practice predation ourselves. We're not supposed to prey on things. We are not supposed to eat fish, fowl, or mammal. We're supposed to eat fruits, vegetables, and grains. That's it. That's the human diet. And generally the stuff God or the Creator put away for us. So I think they kind of nailed it here in Costa Rica because you can't eat an uncooked bean. It's a very, very curious thing. So when you plant beans, nothing bothers the beans. You don't really have to use any pesticides or anything like that because nothing bothers the beans. Like I don't know if you've ever like seen a dry bean, any bean, even a coffee bean, and they're hard as stones. Nothing, no insect can get in there, no parasite, no nothing. And they're very dry. And so absent water, there's no mold or fungus or anything that can grow on them. So you just plant beans, they grow, You pull the plant out by the roots. Boom. You just strip off all the beans, clean them, and you cook them. And then you take one of the beans from the new plant and you plant it in the ground where you just uprooted the last plant. And in 3 months, you'll have a new bean plant. Easiest thing in the world to grow. Fruit, well, you got to compete with everything for fruit, right? You got to compete with the insects. You got to compete with monkeys. You got to compete with birds. Trust me, I live in a rainforest. It's like when you come across a fruit tree in the rainforest, it's not like that fruit's going to be untouched. Okay? You got to look at it, cut some parts off, and then, what's been left for you, you can eat. But this is what these people do, and this is why we call this the left hand, because it takes the basest lessons of nature, which is that the strong survive, and takes it into consciousness. And it's not supposed to go into consciousness, because once you go into consciousness and realize you're an eternal being, why are you killing to defend a physical body? You see? And this is the kind of psychosis that these people suffer from, these dark star people. And well, the interdimensionals are another story. I have a theory about that. I don't know exactly what they are. I don't think anybody really does, except the people working with them. And even they may not fully understand it. But I think the interdimensionals come from a world that's already been cut off from source. And they're trying to get into this world or steal the energy of this world. And these things happen. Okay? Like, things happen that you can't even imagine. Sometimes you see the idea expressed in the weirdest of places, like Marvel Comics. You have the Silver Surfer, and the Silver Surfer was the herald of Galactus, and Galactus was the eater of worlds. Well, if something can appear in the human imagination, some variant of it exists. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the imagination, because nothing that comes into the imagination can be wholly untrue. If it were any other way, you'd be able to imagine a fourth primary color, and you can't. Okay? So they take the predatory nature and bring it up into consciousness, where consciousness is below the individual level, and use it as this rationalization to become spiritual predators. It's the left-hand path fulfilled, because even the left-hand path is supposed to lead back to the Creator. It's unfulfilled. So it's an improper left-hand path. Very interesting. And that would mean that even the gods of the left-hand path are displeased with these people. Okay? Which is probably why we're going into a cycle of destruction. So I think that's about it. And thank God, man. I don't think I could do another one. So that is the womb inseminated by Solomon. And it's the temple. And the temple will be an evil construct. It's not even built yet, and there's evil everywhere in the world. Just the intent to build it is accelerating the evil in the world. And the evil comes from these interdimensionals, and their vibration is worse than a demon. They're horrible fucking things. Talk to anyone who's ever had an encounter with one of these men in black. It's the creepiest feeling ever. Okay? Well, that wraps up my 5-part series on Solomon. If there's any questions, just send them to me. I can always answer them in a follow-up. But this has been a bang-up series, man. I think I don't think I'm going to be able to top this for quite a while, man. I think it'll be mediocre podcasts for about 3 weeks after this, but there you go. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.